India's External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar said that India was not the biggest importer of Russian oil and that he was perplexed as India's purchase of oil from the US had in fact increased. The statements came in as Donald Trump has been putting pressure on India to stop buying oil from Russia, claiming that the move was fueling Russia's aggression against Ukraine. Speaking at a bilateral meeting with his Russian counterpart, Sergey Lavrov in Moscow, India's External Affairs Minister Jaishankar said, and I quote, "We are not the biggest purchasers of Russian oil, that is China. We are not the biggest purchasers of LNG, that is the European Union. We are not the country which has the biggest trade surge with Russia after 2022. I think there are some countries to the south." Unquote.
We are not the biggest purchasers of Russian oil, that is China. We are not the biggest purchasers of Russian LNG. I'm not sure, but I think that is the European Union. We are not the country which has the biggest trade surge with Russia after 2022. I think there are some countries to the south. We are a country where actually the Americans said for the last few years that we should do everything to stabilize the world energy markets, including buying oil from Russia. Incidentally, we also buy oil from America, and that amount has been increasing. So, quite honestly, we are very perplexed at the logic of the argument that you had referred to.
Donald Trump was pretty clear when he announced the tariffs, but he's gone silent since then. But you mentioned the Alaska summit. In fact, after the Alaska summit, you also had Zelensky and the other European leaders visiting Washington, and there was a meeting in the White House. And again, I think the next step for that is this trilateral meeting expected between Donald Trump, Zelensky, as well as Putin. And that could perhaps pave the way for potentially a ceasefire and peace thereafter. But until then, I think, there isn't really any surety on which way August 27th is going to turn when it comes to secondary tariffs on India. But I think the other point that Dr. S. Jaishankar was making is also a pertinent one, and that is the fact that that we haven't really seen a sizable increase in trade, with Russia since 2022, and that is again something where he's also mentioning that our oil import from US is also increasing. We don't know what those numbers are, but we are made to understand that there is some increase in India buying oil from from US as well. So obviously India trying to also balance out this large ego of US President Donald Trump, and at the same time what we've been saying, protecting our own economic interests. So I think Dr. S. Jaishankar there just clarifying India's position, which has been fairly firm, that India needs to protect its economic interests. And in fact, ever since those secondary tariff threats were issued on India, India and Russia have also started working closer together. In fact, the terms of reference have already been signed, and potentially a roadmap for FTA should follow soon. And that includes, among other Eurasian countries, of course, Russia. So we are also at some point stating our discomfort with US President Donald Trump and his administration. In fact, just yesterday, Scott Bessent had also gone on an interview, if I'm not mistaken, on Fox News, again stating the administration's displeasure at India continuing to import Russian oil, and also not mincing their words in quoting that India is funding the war economy of Russia. So I think India again making its point very clear, and also some sort of, if I may put it, some sort of a defiance against the US administration by saying that here we are signing terms of reference with Russia and the Eurasian region, and we are looking at increasing our trade with that bloc as well.